You think it's an American way to deport a 4-year-old with cancer? You think it's an American way to deport a woman who's lived here for 20 years and pays taxes? That's a nonviolent criminal that's breastfeeding her 1-year-old daughter to be deported and separated from her family. That's the American way. You have been one of those people, like many others, that have wanted the Epstein files to be released. I also am on your side on this. It doesn't matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans that are exposed. Why is Donald Trump calling people like you stupid? He said that today. And he's saying that, David, people like you were duped by the Democrats. What is your response to that?
Yeah, I don't feel duped. I have been talking about Epstein now. I feel like for a week straight. And I kind of understand the president this morning being like, you know what, I'm done with it. If you're with me or you're not, I kind of understand where he's coming from. Look, I get it. A lot of people are upset. They want transparency. There's a little bit of a messaging fumble, I would admit, about this whole Epstein thing. But where I'm at right now with it is, look, some things have been released. People say release the files. Some things have been released. Look, we have flight logs. We have some black books. And obviously we have evidence that was used in the prosecution of Epstein and Maxwell, and people are in jail for it. But at this point, it's just becoming a moving goalpost and a giant nag. And, for everything.
Why wasn't a moving goalpost, for the last five years? Why is it all of a sudden a moving goalpost now? Because Donald Trump doesn't want to think about it. I don't understand that.
No, it would, in my opinion, what it looks like is no matter where we go with this Epstein stuff, no matter how much is released, it'll still never be enough. If it's a redacted file, they'll have issues with the redaction. If there's no redaction, then they'll be upset that why aren't more people listed in this files getting arrested because of the lack of evidence. And if we arrest people and then they aren't convicted, they'll say the judicial system is corrupt and part of the list. They were probably on Epstein Island too. No matter where you go with this, nobody's ever going to be happy. And I would rather celebrate the wins of this administration and also focus on the work that we have to do ahead. Look, I understand Donald Trump's position of saying, I'm ready to move on if you're with me or you're not with me, because the reality is Donald Trump doesn't need us to be reelected again, but we need him a lot more than he needs us. We need him to carry out the rest of the agenda that the American people put him in office to complete. And I'm confident that he's going to continue to deliver on as many of the promises as he can keep within his power for the rest of his term.
But it was Pam Bondi who made the promises. It was Donald Trump who made the promises. It was the MAGA base that was talking about this for years and years. And now all of a sudden I'm hearing it's confusing from people like you and so many others. Now all of a sudden, let's just trust the government. No, you know what? Let's just let it be and let's let it go. There are obviously a lot of children that were molested. There are obviously, if there's not an actual list, there's certainly a lot of names. Why all of a sudden are you taking the approach of, let's just let the president do his thing and let's just put this in the back burner? I just find that to be very politically convenient, David.
It's a political reality. How far are we going to go? And that's where I'm at like this. We have Dan Bongino, we have Kash Patel, we have Pam Bondi, all saying, look, we've prosecuted everybody we could prosecute. We've looked at the evidence. This is as far as this is going to go. We have to consider this case as closed.
Why did Bongino take a day off on Friday then and get at odds with Pam Bondi then? Why did Kash Patel and Dan Bongino talk about this for years?
That story was later clarified that he was actually having an issue with Susie Wiles, not Pam Bondi.
Well, all I know is Dan Bongino.
And he returned.
Dan Bongino and Kash Patel have been talking about this list and how it should be released for years. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, we're supposed to be led to believe, everything's fine. And they put a video out, and there's 2.5 minutes missing from this video. Yeah. And they didn't show the actual camera angle. And Pam Bondi says, I have the list. I have it on my desk. We're going to relay. And then you have Haba, who goes on Piers Morgan, who says, the list is going to be released. You have Laura Loomers of the world and all these MAGA Republicans who look like absolute idiots with the binders out there in Washington, D.C. And now all of a sudden, Donald, well, let me ask you a question then. Give me one reasonable explanation why you think that all of a sudden Donald Trump doesn't want to talk about this. Now, I think you know what I would say to this. Maybe, call me crazy, David. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that he was on the Epstein flight log 7 times. He was once Jeffrey Epstein's best friend. Maybe, call me crazy, it has something to do with that. Why all of a sudden does Donald Trump not only not want to talk about it, but attacks people that bring it up and attacks so much of his base and calls them stupid? Why?
Look, I've put a lot of thought to that question, actually, and I had the realization a few moments ago. Honestly, you have to put yourself in Donald Trump's shoes for a moment. You know, this is a man who walked away from a media and business empire to run for president in 2015. He received, a 180 on a lot of those people who used to love him, and they turned immediately to hating him. He eventually won, but at what expense? A 2-year Mueller investigation, his family targeted, some tried to to destroy them. Then he moved on after 2 impeachments to multiple indictments. Then you can even move, and the civil lawsuits that we talk about a lot on the show. Then you move forward to this election in 2024, and he was almost assassinated. I mean, this man has given so much to this country. And yet, despite passing the largest tax breaks on the middle class in US history, despite completing the border wall, zero getaways getting into the country across the border over the last 2 months straight, despite the peace between Pakistan and India, and the peace in the Congo, and the peace deals negotiated between Israel and Iran, and the peace being negotiated between Gaza and Israel, and the efforts to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. Despite all of that, people want to talk about Epstein. So you know what? If I'm Donald Trump and I've given everything to this country and everybody just wants to talk about something else, I'm just going to say, you know what, guys, I did my best. I did my best, and that has to be good enough.
There's a lot, David, to dissect with what you just said.
Sure.
I wouldn't define giving, quote, everything to the country by making billions of dollars off the presidency and by dodging the military multiple times and his net worth being more than 5 to 10 times more than it was in 2015. I wouldn't say that's giving it all to the country. And I would also say the people, as you said, that are talking about Epstein have been people on the right and so many of his supporters. So he's calling his own supporters stupid. He even said today that they were duped by the Democrats, which is, by the way, completely absurd. I don't even know what that means. And these were MAGA people that have been spewing this nonsense. And there's a lot of people on the right, in fact, a lot of prominent people on the right that are very, very angry at Donald Trump for this. And I've been very consistent on this since day one. My opinion has not changed. Release the files. If there are Democrats and Republicans in there, I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. If there's evidence to show that there was criminal activity going on with underage children and young teenagers, then we should be able to find out who that is. And all that stuff you mentioned, oh, well, he was the victim of this, he was the victim of that. Okay, pretty easy then. If he's not a part of the Epstein files and his name isn't in there, then he would be the first one to release it, especially if it put Democrats in a bad spot. If there were Democrats like Bill Clinton and others in there, Donald Trump would be the first guy to release this. The reason why he's not releasing it is the same reason why he doesn't want to release his medical records. It's the same reason why he didn't want to release all of his tax records, because the man has something to hide, David. Please admit that. The man has something to hide here.
I don't believe he has anything to hide. I believe he's just ready to move on. And as we've heard from the Justice Department, as we've heard from the FBI, the case is closed. Donald Trump has made it clear on multiple occasions, and a lot of people are upset about it. He's ready to move on.
If he's ready to move on, then why does he still talk about the 2020 election being stolen? If he's ready to move on, then why does he still?
Because he's not moving on from that. He's moving on from Epstein. And this is another reason why it's important.
Why?
Thank you for bringing up the 2020 election, because it's important that we move on from this. And I'm going to tell you why. There is much more. There's much. I don't want to say more significant, because the Epstein thing is very significant, and what happened there is disgusting, and it matters, and there's victims, and they do deserve justice. It's frustrating that they're not getting the justice. But that being said, the 2020 election, COVID, Anthony Fauci, the Biden auto pen scandal, there is thing after thing that we need to investigate in order to protect this country, because Donald Trump's only president.
So talk about the autopilot. You're totally okay with that, and Hunter Biden's laptop.
Auto pen. Is that what you said?
Right, auto pen, excuse me.
I'm on autopilot. The car's driving me.
Right. Joe Biden's talk about Joe Biden's auto pen. You're totally okay with that. But when it comes to children who were victims and were molested, you don't want all the evidence to be presented to public so people can be.
No, what I'm telling you is I believe all the evidence has been presented. I don't believe there's anything more to give.
You would not have said that. You would not have said that 6 months ago. What changed?
Because Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi saying, we don't have any more evidence. We've given you everything we can give you. We consider this case closed. That's good enough for me.
So everything that you guys have been saying for years about the Epstein client list, that the Clintons were on there and all these prominent Democrats were on there and George Soros, It's funny. I haven't
You
heard
say
any
you
MAGA
guys. I
Republicans.
wasn't saying. You say you guys. Epstein
A
has
lot of
never been
people
a
on the
thing.
far right, including Donald
But I
Trump,
don't
by the way.
I don't represent everybody on the far right. I
Okay.
represent David
Donald
Pollack.
Trump is the guy that said that. So why haven't these MAGA Republicans, including Donald Trump, come forward and said, you know what, I was wrong. There is no list. Bill Clinton isn't on the list. Hillary Clinton isn't on the list. Why haven't we seen any? If that's the case, and that was true with what you're saying and what Dan Bongino and Kash Patel are saying, which, by the way, I think is a load of crap and BS.
Yeah.
But let's just say, hypothetically speaking, for argument's sake, let's say they're right. Then why wouldn't all these MAGA Republicans, including Donald Trump, come forward and say, you know what, I had it wrong. We don't have Bill Clinton on this list. Why have they not done that then and admit that they were wrong at a minimum?
You know, I will agree with you to an extent on what you just said, as far as somebody getting in front of a podium and admitting that maybe we didn't have all that we hoped we would have, or at least handled this, and that has been disappointing in a way that I would have liked to see somebody say, look, I know we made some promises. I know we hoped there would be more here, but unfortunately, this is all we have. And if we could do anything more to if anybody has any other evidence, if Congress wants to convene a committee, if there's anybody who has information, share it with us. But unfortunately, this is what we have right now. And it hurts me to not be able to deliver more on this. Brian, I would have been happier to see that, I admit. The messaging has been problematic, and I think it's led to a lot more a lot more drama than necessary. But that being said, again, the premise remains: this is where we are, and so what are we going to do? Well, we can't just complain our way into having new Epstein evidence. The Justice Department, the FBI, the president has all said, this is it. This is where we're at.
So now you believe the FBI. When the FBI says that the 2020 election was one of the most secure elections in American history, you don't believe the FBI. But now all of a sudden, the FBI is telling the truth, and you believe Donald Trump, and you believe Trump's DOJ. The FBI is telling the truth. But when it comes to anything else that doesn't fit the MAGA narrative, the FBI and the DOJ are compromised, and it's Joe Biden's DOJ, and it's weaponized. But when it comes to the Epstein files, and Donald Trump doesn't want to talk about it, even though this was at one time his best friend, which I find very convenient, David, now all of a sudden you believe the FBI and you believe everybody within the DOJ.
I believe this FBI. I believe this DOJ. Yeah, absolutely. Because this FBI and this DOJ hasn't shown a propensity to weaponize itself for political purposes like we saw the previous FBI
they haven't.
do.
What they're doing with Comey and what they're doing with
What are they doing with Comey?
Well, all these investigations, you don't think they're politicizing anything? Nothing at all.
Should we not investigate anything that could have? Comey was Donald Trump's director of the FBI. This wasn't Biden's director. This was Donald Trump's director of the FBI, who secretly recorded the president and then colluded to create a fake dossier, which inspired an 2-year-long investigation that uncovered nothing that was used as the basis to impeach the president. You want to be investigated, Brian.
So you want more investigating into a dossier, but yet all these children that were molested, and you just want to believe.
I didn't say. Now, again, I remind you, there's two people sitting. One person's dead, another sitting in jail. There's 300 gigabytes of information. There has been prosecutions. There's also, unrelated civil lawsuits. So it's not like there hasn't been any justice. It's just people haven't got what they want yet. And so we're talking about two different things. And I do think just because the Epstein investigation was investigated and closed doesn't mean you don't look into James Comey's behavior. I think it's totally legitimate to look into whether or not Joe Biden was involved in making decisions with the auto pens with respect to pardons and things like that. Just because other bad things happen doesn't mean you can't look into one thing just because you can't solve another. So I
just think it's very politically convenient. But I want to ask you a question, because a lot of people,
Sure,
including you, talked about Joe Biden being in the bunker and having Alzheimer's, and we, all the MAGA people out there are apparently physicians and infectious disease experts. I'm wondering, I want to ask you this question. Let's just say during Joe Biden's presidency, I'm going to give you a hypothetical. He criticized Pete Buttigieg, and he was very unhappy with Pete Buttigieg, and he even threatened to fire Pete Buttigieg. Now, he didn't do that, but hypothetically speaking. And he was very upset, and a member of the media said, "Are you thinking of firing him?" And his response was, "Perhaps. I'd like to know how Pete Buttigieg was appointed." You guys would be talking about that statement for months and saying he has Alzheimer's. Well, guess what? Donald Trump did that today. In talking about Jerome Powell, there's possibility that he might fire Powell, and he was blasting Powell, and he said, "I don't know how this guy was ever appointed." That is a direct quote. In 2017, Donald Trump is the guy who appointed this guy. Why are you not saying Donald Trump has Alzheimer's? Why are you not saying Donald Trump is in the bunker when he doesn't even realize that he's the guy who appointed him in the first case? He sounds like a complete moron.
Yeah,
Why are you not calling that out?
let's be fair. If you had to compare the mental stamina of Joe Biden and Donald Trump, if you look at Donald Trump on the world stage, you look at Donald Trump's performance with respect to foreign leaders in the offices, if you look at the way he's interacted with the public, taking questions from the press at every opportunity, there is legitimately, and I don't know how anybody can disagree, there is very little comparison that you can make to Joe Biden's mental feebleness to Donald Trump's mental stamina.
Okay, so
And
I'm
so
asking you,
there's no yeah.
what is your
Go ahead.
excuse today when Donald Trump is considering firing Powell and asked the question in public in front of the media and members of his cabinet with Marco Rubio sitting right next to him? How did this guy get appointed when Donald Trump is the guy who appointed him in 2017?
I don't see a correlation between what you're suggesting and Donald Trump having Alzheimer's.
Where's your criticism? Where's your criticism of Trump? Is that
what
the
do you
guy
want me to
that's
criticize?
That's the guy that should be the leader of the free world, who's calling on a guy to be fired and blasting him and saying, how did this guy ever get appointed when he's the idiot who appointed him?
Okay. Inflation is stable, right?
No, it's not. It's gone up. The two numbers
No, it
just gone
hasn't.
up to 0.3. Yes, it has. The two numbers just came out. It's up 0.3%. They came out yesterday. I talked about it.
We have the stock market hitting record highs. The world is becoming increasingly less dangerous. There is win after win after win. And somehow to suggest that we're able to accomplish all of this while the president has Alzheimer's, like, you know what I'm saying? Like this argument.
I'm not saying that Donald Trump has Alzheimer's. Here's what I'm being facetious. Here's what I am saying. You guys acting as physicians, if Joe Biden made a statement like that he wanted to fire somebody in his administration,
I get your question. There was way more evidence that Joe Biden had mental concerns, and the Democrat media has admitted this. By the way, there was way more signs that something was going on with Joe Biden than simply just misstating something or misremembering something. I mean, you saw Joe Biden's performance at the debate. I think you and I even talked about it, and it was like, yeah, that was a lot worse than a lot of people thought.
Donald Trump is the president of the United States, and he doesn't even know.
And Joe Biden was president of the United States. And
yes, he was. And when Joe Biden was president of the United States, there weren't people that are getting deported from this country that are nonviolent criminals without due process.
Are we going there? They are having due process. Who's getting deported without due process? Who's getting deported without due process?
Is that a real question? Do you think Garcia?
100% honest question. Who's getting deported without due process?
Every single person that is a nonviolent criminal, particularly those that were sent to El Salvador prisons and some of the highest maximum security prisons in the world that have never been convicted of a violent crime. Joe Biden and Barack Obama did not do that.
Hey, wait, hold on, and let's go there. And the prime example, of course, everybody knows in your audience, and you know as well, and we've talked about it. The prime example of people being deported to El Salvador without due process is Kilmer Brego Garcia. Kilmer Brego Garcia was then returned to the United States.
267 others. Go ahead.
What did the Supreme Court say on that? The Supreme Court said that the deportations required a different procedure. But since they were already gone, all they could do is suggest, hey, you could give them the due process. But forget the people in El Salvador, because this is something that a talking point, unfortunately. Yeah, forget them, because I don't care. They're violent criminals in El Salvador. I don't care about them.
No, that's not true. No, that's a lie. No, that's not true.
I don't care about those people.
And I still don't care about those people. First of all, that is a lie. Not every single person that is sent to El Salvador is a violent criminal. You know that.
Invite them into your home, man. Empty the El Salvadorian prisons and take anybody who's claiming asylum into your home.
What is inviting them into your? So what is inviting them?
We don't want them here, Brian. We don't want them here.
Oh, well, no, it's not we. People like you don't want them here.
America does not want them here. You might want them. We don't.
Not true.
But let me say something that's really important for people to understand. If you come into this country illegally, you don't have a right to be paroled into the United States. The obligation under the law is for the U.S. government to detain you until you have what you're asking for
And
due
in our
process.
Constitution, it says any person, not any citizen. You know that.
What are we talking about? With respect to what?
What do you mean with respect to
I'm
what
telling you,
you're
if you
talking
enter
about?
this
Because any person.
country illegally, the law says if you're in this country illegally, you're supposed to be detained until you're either one, deported, or two, had an opportunity to have an asylum hearing. Certain people, by the law,
And
that
there
the
are
due.
many, and there are
Yep.
many people that not only have not had an asylum hearing, there's nothing that says they have the right to be sent to other countries where they were not born into high maximum security prisons without a court date. You know that is not due process. In fact, that is the definition of the opposite of due process, and
Like
that's
I said,
exactly what Donald Trump
I
is doing.
still haven't figured out how your side keeps defending.
I don't know why you keep saying your side. It's the side of
Because most of
humanity.
America disagrees. These were bad people, dude. These people were taking over apartment complexes and committing some of the most violent
You are
crimes in America. So
what
Trump
you are
got them
saying.
out. We should
What you
say
are
thank you.
What you are saying is not factually accurate. In fact, the overwhelming majority of the people that Tom Homan and ICE are deporting are
Yeah.
non-violent criminals.
And
You
where
are
do you get that information from?
from
Deporting to,
their own.
wait, hold
They've
on, hold on,
admitted
hold on.
it.
Getting deported to El Salvador, the ones that are being detained in El Salvador, are those ones you're talking about, or all the people?
There
I just
are
want to make sure I
over,
understand.
as a whole, everybody that is being deported by the Trump administration, the
Okay.
majority
That's
of
an
them,
important point. That's
which
an
means more
important
than
point.
50% are
Okay.
non-violent criminals. And I
Let's
will
pause
also
there.
say 60%, I'll go to El Salvador too.
Well,
Over
no, I
60,
want to separate El Salvador because what you just said is an important point, and I'm not disagreeing with you. You do not have to be the criteria to deport somebody that is not lawfully present in America. It isn't contingent upon whether or not they're a violent criminal. I don't know where that's come from. If you
I
don't
didn't
have a
say that.
right to enter the country, we can remove you, regardless if you've
You
committed a crime here or
I
not.
didn't say that that was illegal. What I
Right.
am saying is that if you're a non-violent criminal, you cannot be handcuffed, and ICE has to identify themselves. That's number one. Number two, if you're a non-violent criminal and you haven't received due process, which many of these people have not, you cannot be sent to a country of not your
You're
origin.
talking about El
And
Salvador. I don't want to talk about El Salvador. I want to talk
it's
about
not just El Salvador. There are
what other
thousands of people.
countries.
There are several other prisons and thousands of people that have been deported that are nonviolent criminals that have been sent to these detention centers, or as I would like to call them,
Without
some of the
any due
highest
process. They've been
maximum.
rounded
Yes,
up, put on
yes,
planes,
yes,
and taken out of the country without any due
yes,
process. Okay.
yes. That's exactly what I am saying. Yes, and the U.S. has deported immigrants from Jamaica, Cuba, and other countries to the
And where have they
African
sent them
kingdom,
to?
Eswatini.
Yeah. Do you know
Okay?
why? Why did they
Well,
deport them there? Do you know why, right?
explain to me why. Go ahead.
Because Cuba and Jamaica wouldn't take them back. So what are we supposed to do when we remove
Well,
somebody from the country and then we take them to their home and they go, oh, I don't want them. And that is such a funny argument because look, and so when we found another country that was willing to take them, but this is such a funny argument. These are people that are so good and so innocent and so nonviolent that their home countries don't even
David,
the place you're from doesn't. That's not
David, you cut out there for a second. You cut out.
I'm
You
sorry,
cut
I'm
out
in a
there.
parking lot. I'm trying.
That's okay. You cut out there for a second. The point that I'm trying to make, and
Let me
I
try to
think
move
it's
to a better place.
that's okay. The point that I tried to make, which is a pretty simple one here, is that in the Constitution it says any person, not any citizen. And the second thing I would say is many of these people are not getting due process. They're not getting their chance in a courtroom.
I disagree. I think they are getting due process.
How? If somebody doesn't even identify themselves and kidnaps them, how is that due process?
They're not being kidnapped. They're identifying themselves. They
Not
are having
true.
due process. Many of the
Not
people that
true.
everybody sees, they're.
That's not true,
You're
David.
saying it's
There's
not
videos.
true. I'm saying it is. So
there's videos of ICE agents that are not
the videos are true.
Agents that are not identifying themselves, that are handcuffing people, and the families don't even know where their members are being sent to. That's the definition of kidnapping.
They're not being kidnapped. They don't have a right to be here. They're by law. They're obligated to be detained, and they're being detained. And while our federal agents, who are innocent people, and I know how angry you get when innocent police officers were attacked on January 6th, these officers are being attacked, assaulted, rocks thrown at them. They're being doxxed. I mean, you've seen the
So they're
violence that these poor
so the
officers,
people
these
that are
public
so the
servants.
people that are
Yeah.
attacking those officers, would you label them as hostages and patriots?
Would you?
Donald Trump labeled the people who beat the cops on January
I
6th as
understand.
hostages and
I understand.
patriots
So,
and gave them
Brian,
a pardon.
what do you call the people then that are attacking the federal office?
Well, unlike you, I am going to be unlike you, David. I am extremely consistent on this issue.
Okay.
And if a police officer or an ICE
Yeah.
agent identifies themselves, by the way, there is evidence to prove that not all of these ICE agents are identifying themselves. But I'm going to be very clear, as I've said with Black Lives Matter protests or January 6th or any situation, if you attack an officer, whether it be an ICE agent or even any type of law enforcement, it's wrong and it's against the law, and I hope you're held to the highest extent. But you guys won't do that. You defend the people who beat the cops on January 6th.
So you are Brian Shapiro believes that the violence against ICE officers, with respect to lawfully detaining illegal aliens,
I don't agree.
you're
I don't
opposed
agree
to
with,
that.
I don't agree with any violence so long as they identify themselves. But
We're on the
again,
same page.
what would you? Well, I don't think we are, because the guy who you support still called those people hostages and patriots who beat cops on January 6th. I'm consistent. You guys are not. Only when it fits your narrative are you pro-police. Hold on a second.
No,
You're pro-police.
yes.
You're pro-police when it comes to an undocumented immigrant that commits an assault. But when it comes to a MAGA right-wing white supremacist who commits an assault on January 6th, they're hostages and patriots, and they were treated unfairly, and give them a pardon. I wonder if that has to do with the color of their skin. I just wonder. I wonder that question.
I mean, that is not as, I don't wonder that, because on January 6th, and as I said, and I really don't want to get into a January 6th debate, but on January 6th, I've said consistently, the people who are violent and engaged in criminal activity,
Not the man
they
who you
deserve.
support. Not the man who you support.
Hold on. They deserved to be arrested. Even people that might have been committing nonviolent crimes,
They deserve
that
to
might
be
have
pardoned.
been
They deserve to be pardoned and
Hang
called
on.
patriots and hostages.
The issue with January 6th, and I agree with the president with respect to this, and I agreed with Joe Biden with respect to Hunter Biden under the same premise, is that nobody who was present and prosecuted under January 6th was treated or prosecuted fairly. They were prosecuted under laws that weren't applicable to their situation. The Supreme Court spoke on it.
What? Okay, so let me get this right.
That they
Let me
used to put people
let me
in jail.
get this right.
These people did not receive
David,
fair
okay, David,
trials, Brian. So I
David,
have an issue with that.
Let me get this right.
Yeah.
So you're making the case that the
Yeah.
people who beat cops on January 6th, some of whom were convicted of
Did not get fair trials. Correct.
unfair, they deserve the pardon. Hold on.
Battery on the law enforcement officer is not seditious conspiracy.
Okay, but there's a lot. Okay, but Donald Trump labeled all those people as hostages and patriots, and most of them got pardons. But yet, if you're an undocumented immigrant in this country, some of whom that have been here for decades that have not committed any violent crimes, and some of those people, not all, but some of them are sent to high maximum security prisons like in El Salvador. You've said on this show, quote, I don't care about them, but you care about the American citizen white supremacists who beat cops on January 6th.
You said a key word there, American citizen. I am not spilling.
So if you're not an American citizen, we could treat you like a murderer. But if you beat cops on January 6th, as long as you're an American citizen, you're fine.
If you choose to break our rules, cross into our country illegally, and then hide here, and then work in this country illegally, and you continue to perpetuate decades of illegal behavior, yes, I don't think that's okay.
You don't like people that have shown decades. You don't like people that have shown decades of illegal behavior, yet you have no problem voting for the guy that's a 34-count felon.
How long does it take to enter the country legally? I mean,
it could take upwards of 50, I'll tell you why. It takes up to 15 years in some cases, and Republicans are always the people that vote down bills that make it easier for people to get citizenship.
Okay. And then so the people who said, I don't feel like waiting in that line that people have been waiting in for 15 years, and they go, I'm just going to cut to the front of it. They should be treated differently? Is that the American way that we don't?
What
if we're at the water park and we all want to go in the triple drop slide and I'm waiting in line? and then some family cuts in front of me and says,
You
"Yeah, I don't
think
feel like waiting."
you think it's
They
the
don't
American
deserve
way to
anything
deport?
special, Brian. They don't
You
deserve
think it's
anything special.
You think it's an American way to deport a 4-year-old with cancer? You think it's an
No.
American way to deport a woman who's lived here for 20 years and pays taxes? That's a nonviolent criminal that's breastfeeding her 1-year-old
Wait a
daughter
minute.
to be deported and
How
separated from the
is she
family.
paying taxes
That's the
here?
American way.
How do illegal aliens,
There are plenty of
Brian, how do
undocumented
illegal aliens
immigrants.
pay taxes?
There are plenty of undocumented immigrants in this country that still pay their taxes. That is a fact, and you know that.
How? But how
What
do
do you
they
mean
pay their
how? They
taxes?
do. They do.
How are they
That's
earning
a
money in
fact.
America if they're not documented?
There are plenty of undocumented immigrants in this country. It's a fact that actually do pay their taxes that have been here for
How
decades.
do they pay taxes?
When you're saying it's the American way, it's the American way to deport nonviolent criminals to an El Salvador prison. That's the American way.
It's the American way to enforce our laws and respect our border. That is the American way. America is a country of law and order. And just because you break the law and cut to the front of the line, you don't get to be treated special.
We're a country
Not in
of law and
America,
order. We're a country of law and order unless you beat a cop on January 6th. Then you're a patriot. You were treated unfairly.
Yeah, or when they're beating ICE agents. I mean, or beating police officers in how many of these cities that burned in the wake of George Floyd. It's such a double standard that the left is allowed to be as violent as they want, attack whoever they want, murder whoever they want. Remember that cop, the retired police officer was murdered in St. Louis riots? It's okay. But
what Democrat has condoned? What prominent Democrat has called somebody who did those actions heroes and patriots?
The mayor of LA is supporting the violence against these officers. She's
Give me one statement. Give me one statement where the mayor of LA has supported violence.
Maxine Waters says, "Get in their faces." Barack Obama, get in their faces.
That's bullshit. That is not true.
No, I'll send you the soundbites.
No, what you just said is a lie. Maxine Waters never condoned violence against law enforcement. You are lying, David. That is not true.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Maxine Waters said,
remember Donald Trump being...
Hold on. Maxine Waters said, "Get in their face." That is saying "get in their face" and be confrontational is not the same thing as saying beat law enforcement officers or call them hostage.
Wait a minute. Okay.
That's not true,
David. If getting in their face and being confrontational is simply just rhetorical, then fight is simply just rhetorical as well. Because the president of the United States was impeached after leaving office because he asked his supporters.
Donald Trump wasn't. Donald Trump wasn't.
That was a key element of the impeachment.
No, Donald Trump wasn't impeached for saying fight. Donald Trump was impeached for lying about. No, he wasn't. He was lying about the 2020 election, which didn't happen. He said the election was stolen.
He lied about the election. That's why he was impeached.
No, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. There's a list here. He lied about saying that Democrats rigged the election. Dereliction of duty. He sat there for 4 hours during January 6th. He did absolutely nothing. They begged him to do something, and it took him 4 hours to put out a statement. There is plenty else to provide there. It wasn't just him saying fight, but the bottom line is if Donald Trump didn't lie and say the election was stolen, January 6th doesn't happen. Period. End of story.
No, you know what the best part is? Donald Trump was reelected by a majority of the country, the largest electoral college win he's had.
49%.
He's president, isn't he?
Okay, you just said the majority of the country. He's got some of the lowest approval ratings in the history of the nation. And by the way, out of everybody who voted, 49% of them voted for Donald Trump. That's not the majority of the country, David. That's also a lie. That's not true.
Okay, here's what I do know that's definitely not a lie. Donald Trump is president of the United States. Everybody I know that voted for him is happy that they voted for him, even in spite of all of this Epstein stuff, to bring it full circle.
Really? Everybody that you know.
So
I guess you don't know Jackie Sobiak, Laura Loomer, MAGA Republicans, the Bro Boys, people on the right that are very, very angry and upset. Maybe the people you know don't.
They might be. Listen, Brian, don't make the mistake that just because somebody's angry and upset about the way the Epstein investigation is going, doesn't mean it translates into them being disappointed that they voted for President Trump. Everybody is still proud to support President Trump, thinks he's doing an amazing job, and we're all very excited. We're all very excited to see the wins that the American people will continue to enjoy because of the leadership of Donald Trump. Yeah.
They're bragging, David, about the billions of dollars they've made because of these tariffs when it's actually the American consumer that is
billions of dollars.
For it.
No, that's not true because prices. Listen, as Trump calls them the panicants, everybody said tariffs were going to cause inflation to skyrocket. You know how many hundreds of billions of dollars we took in from tariffs? Look at the trade deals we negotiated with China,
How many
with
deals were
Great
made?
Britain, with
What deals were made? The Great Britain?
we,
No, wrong. Again, that's a lie. The Great Britain deal has not been signed off on. I don't know.
all I'm
I
doing
don't
is
know what
lying.
you're talking
All
about.
right,
Well, okay.
it's every. Yeah.
It's misinformation. You just said there was a deal made with Great Britain. That's not true, David. If it's not a lie, then why are you
Okay,
saying it?
what is the status with the trade deal with Great Britain with respect
Great
to the
Britain has not
tariffs?
agreed to it, and they have not signed off on it. There's
Okay,
a
but what is the
framework.
status of it? Thank you.
Framework.
Same.
Framework.
Okay, what is there with China right now?
They haven't signed off on the deal either. You just said they
But
made
what
a
is it?
deal.
But there's a framework for a deal, all of which is being finalized while Brian record tariffs. Listen,
David,
we yeah.
framework doesn't mean a deal has been signed.
Well,
You're an
look.
attorney.
We have two different perspectives of the way things are going.
Wait, hold on a second.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. So writing a letter to a country is a deal?
Listen, Brian, we can go around back and forth all day. There is one reality that is never going to change, right? Donald Trump is president of the United States.
Well, I know you keep saying that, but
He's
you keep
delivering.
saying
Well, no, because it upsets you because you hate him so much. But
no,
here's
it
the deal.
upsets me that you say things that are blatantly
Donald
false.
Trump, what is true is that Donald Trump is president of the United States.
Yes,
Donald
I know
Trump
that.
Donald Trump continues to deliver on the promises he made to Americans.
Really,
America is better. Yes,
wait,
America
wait,
is
hold on,
better
hold on.
off because Donald Trump is president.
Who was the guy that said the war in Ukraine would be over in 24 hours? Who was the guy who said that?
The war in Ukraine started under Joe Biden, and it lasted 4 years. And how many hundreds of thousands of people died thanks to Joe Biden?
Who was the guy who said the war would be over in 24 hours?
Well, this is another funny thing. And it didn't end in 24 hours. And so what happened instead, Brian? It didn't end in 24 hours. Trump tried to negotiate with Zelensky. Trump tried to negotiate with Putin. And when it fell through, now Trump is turning, because how many Democrats are like, Trump's in bed with Putin. Trump and Russia. Now Trump is sending millions of dollars worth of weapons to the NATO to help support Ukraine.
Which is what people like you were criticizing Joe Biden for.
I didn't want Zelensky getting our money. If we're gonna arm NATO to turn up pressure against Putin in hopes of ending the war, I'm okay with that. We're talking about different things.
Donald Trump said that if Ukraine got more weaponry, that it would start World War III, and now he's helping Ukraine get more weaponry. But guess what also happened? Exactly what Joe Biden did.
Is not negotiating, and Trump wants to see an end to the war. And as Trump has proven,
what happened to the art of the deal? What happened to the art of the deal? He said he'd end the war in 24 hours.
Brian,
giving him another 50 days. That's the art of the deal. He doesn't know who Vladimir Putin is by now, and he wants to give him another 50 days. How many more innocent people are going to die in Ukraine? He wants. You're
interfering with my Zen, Brian. I was in Zen when I got in my car. You're interfering with my Zen.
I'm sorry. You're an attorney. I'm shocked, David. In closing,
not in a suit. I'm in my car in a t-shirt. You're interfering with my Zen.
Your framework of a Zen. I'm just going to use the word framework now. Your framework of a Zen. Hey, it's always a good debate. I appreciate you coming on, David, as always. I'm going to go back to the framework of my show.
But good luck.
I do appreciate you coming on. Get back into your Zen and your framework of Donald Trump being the best president of all time.